Hi everybody, I'm Justin from Main Man Bassing. In this video, I want to offer my recommendations for some different setups for bass fishing from banks. In my shorts feeds, I see a lot of people fishing from the bank. I used to fish from the bank, so I figured I'd make this video and offer my opinions as to some setups that you could use that would probably most likely be effective. As always, feel free to jump in the chat, offer your opinions. If you know of products that are better, go ahead, list them. I want to build a community. I don't want to tell people how they should be fishing, but I do want to offer my suggestions for maybe people who are new to fishing or who aren't doing that well in the bank. I think I can offer them some experience and hopefully help them. And I want y'all's helps too. All right, so feel free to comment. When I was fishing from the bank, I usually found myself in three different scenarios. I was either fishing into open water, I was fishing into docks or structure, or I was fishing into vegetation. And you can have different setups for each of those scenarios. So I want to discuss that. We'll start with open water. Right? The key to open water, in my opinion, is a long cast. What do you need for a long cast? You really need a long pole. And I'd say a heavy fast action. You need a bait caster reel with a deep spool, plenty of line on it. And I'd say about a 6-to-1 gear ratio speed. You want to go a half-ounce lure. I really recommend a swim bait, although you can get away with some top water. What you don't want is a jig or a crankbait, something you don't want anything that touches the bottom of the lake, because if it gets snagged 120 feet from you, you're gonna have to cut off all that line and lose your jig. So I'd stay off the bottom in open water casting. And again, the most important aspect to fishing open water is the distance of the cast. You really want to be able to bomb your cast out as far as possible. Right? If you could only cast right here, it just limits how many fish you can attract. If you can get a cast out to, 70 feet, you're going to put yourself in a much better position to catch a bass, because from 70 feet to the bank, there could be bass. You don't know where the bass are. They could be everywhere. These could all be bass somewhere around your lure. And you're just giving yourself more of an opportunity to attract that bass. So the distance is really, really important. Let's look at some specific equipment I recommend for an open water scenario. Your rod, a 1-3 Fishing D5 black 711 heavy fast rod that's about $70. People might be laughing at me for a nearly 8-foot rod, but remember, what's important is your casting distance, and this rod will do it. It's really rugged, it's pretty light, you can feel most strikes. It's a really good rod at a good value. For line, you can do 10 or 12 pound fluorocarbon. I like Strike King Contra. You don't have to use that, but I like it. I don't think it's ever failed me. 10 pounds is going to get you a further cast, but you're going to have to retie your lures a little bit more often. 12 pounds, a little more rugged, but it won't give you as far of a cast. And that's around $20. Some of the lures I was talking about, on the top you have that Spro Rat 30. That's for top water. It's a really great lure. But I really like the Spro Swim Bait 40. It's about 4 inches long. It's slow sink, so it sinks 1 foot every 3 seconds. That allows you to fish it very slowly. And it's about a half ounce, so you could bomb it out there. If you wait 9 seconds, it's going to drop 3 feet, and then you can bring it in really, really slowly. It helps attract a lot of different bass. I've seen it multiple times in my own experience where I'll cast that thing out, I'll bring it in as slow as possible, and then you'll see bass tracking it. It's pretty cool. You can also throw that, because it sinks so slowly, you can fish it in 6 inches of water, 4 inches of water right up on the bank. That's another favorite thing to do, is you can just parallel the bank with that swim bait and get it as close to the bank as you can and as far away from you as you can. So instead of casting out to deeper water, you're just casting parallel to that shore and as shallow as possible. It's another strategy. It's really great. And it works really well with that lure. And either of those, it's going to cost you about $25. We'll look at the reel. I'd recommend a Lew's Speed Spool bait caster. It's $100. And I would go with this 6-to-1 gear ratio. So a little bit of money, but open water, I think it's worth spending that, because there's a good chance you're going to catch a bass, and you need to be able to cover a lot of water. So you kind of need this to pay this money for it. The next scenario I'll discuss are fishing docks. Accuracy is really important here. So you don't need it as long of a pole. When we're fishing into docks and structure, we need accuracy. How do we do that with a shorter pole? We still want heavy fast. We still want heavy fast, because when we do set that hook, when you set that hook, you want to be able to rip that bass out of the structure. You don't want it to take you to the pilings and wrap your line around it and have it break off. So you still need heavy fast. You want a bait casting reel, a faster gear ratio. You can do 7, even 8 really, because you're going to be fishing with a jig here. You want a 3/8 ounce jig or a Creature rigged Texas with a 3/8 ounce bullet weight and a 4/0 extra wide gap hook. You can use 20 to 50 pound braid here, and or 15 to 20 pound fluorocarbon. I mentioned earlier, right, docks is really about accuracy. You need to be able to hit these corners. You want to pitch that jig back here, drag it through. You want the shadows along the edges of the dock. The shadow right here, you got to be able to pitch it or cast it and just get it right into that shadow, right underneath the dock. Here, this would be up here. That's a great little shadow. That's where I'd be aiming, or right here. That's all really important with dock fishing. That's why I think you should use a jig. Some of the specific pieces of equipment, you want a shorter pole. You still want a heavy fast action. The Lew's Speed Spool, if you go 7-to-1, you're okay. You don't, because you're not casting usually that far. If you're not casting that far, you don't need a high-end reel. You don't need an expensive reel. But with an expensive reel or a more expensive reel, you get that quality. But it's not necessary here. Line, you want 15 to 20 pound fluorocarbon, or 20 to 50 pound braid. I like Cast King. I always get the bright yellow so I can see it. Your jigs, 3/8 ounce with soft plastic trailer. If you have vegetation under those docks or structure, you want a Creature Bait rigged Texas with a 3/8 ounce bullet weight and a 4/0 extra wide gap hook. And the last scenario I'll discuss is fishing into vegetation. I think the goal here usually is going to be distance. With distance, you need a longer pole. You still want heavy to fast. If you can get extra heavy, because you're going to set the hook and rip that bass out of that vegetation as soon as possible. You don't want them taking you down into the lilies or the weeds and burying you in a salad. Your bait caster reel, you want hyperspeed. These you always want 8+, 8.1, 8-to-1, 9-to-1, hyper gear ratios, fast. The 8.3-to-1s, when you turn that handle once, sometimes they bring in like 5.5 feet of line, right? That's how fast you want it. You're always going to be using a frog pretty much exclusively. Again, you want a longer pole with a heavy fast action. If you can get extra heavy, get it. I like the Daiwa CA80, 8.3-to-1 gear ratio. Really smooth reel, casts really well. Really great reel. I think it's $100. I would do Cast King braid. I like Cast King braid. You don't have to use it, but it's relatively priced and relatively cheap, and it's good quality. It's decent quality. You can go 20 to 50 pounds. 20 pounds, it's going to get you a further cast. However, if there's really dangerous looking structure like metal or anything sharp that can cut the braid, you want to beef it up a little bit towards that 50-pound test. And then your frogs. I like Spro frogs. You can use whatever frog you want, but I do think the style of frog is important. You want one with a front end just like this picture. Some frogs have flat front ends, and they're meant for popping. So they're meant to splash the top of the water. You don't want that when you're pulling it through vegetation. You want a nose just like the one you see here, and so it comes up and over that vegetation and won't get caught. That's the video. Please feel free to jump in the comments, add to the discussion. Tell me what you think. If you think there's better equipment out there, if you disagree, go ahead. I want to hear it. I want to build a community. I want to offer suggestions. I don't really want to tell people how to fish, but I think this is a good starting point. So I'm looking forward to hearing some thoughts on this. All right. I hope you have a great time fishing from the bank, and I hope you catch really big bass soon. Thanks. I'll see you in the next video.